Okay.
We're on the final paragraph on Omid Ayin Vav. Omid Ayin Vav. And we've just sort of concluded and summarized the Nakuda of the Maimah till now. In the middle paragraph here, V'nimtza Muvim Mikozeh, we've summarized how that through the Eibush creating the world Midas Adin, whether you learn the Pshat like in Shuvi Yisrael, or whether you learn the Pshat like in Lulav Ravim B'Yim Shmini Atzeres, whether you see it as intense Gilui of Elikus, or you see it as an intense Helam of Elikus, both versions of the Pshat of Midas Adin would also have the unintended consequence of increasing the Metzias of Ra and Klippa, which would ultimately be a bad thing, and be another reason why to have shit of Midas Arachim. Not just because people couldn't tolerate or maintain the intensity of Avodah that would be demanded by a Midas Adin, Sai because Midas Adin will be too exacting on a person, or Sai Midas Adin being too much of a Helam Hester on Elikus, and it will be too much of a Nisayin. More than that, it would be the proliferation of Toyu Vayu V'Cheshech. Bereshis Bar Elikim, then there'll be Toyu Vayu V'Cheshech. Okay. Now we're going to elaborate further on the on how, like what we described, that how from Tachlis HaKedusha, Midas Adin is Tachlis HaKedusha. It's a Midah HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a Midah Atzilus. Yeah? We're going to be maybe a bit more precise. Gevura of Atzilus. Yeah, the Tzimtzumim of Atzilus. How from there do you get Klip and Sitra Achra? How does that transition happen? Just like we asked Bechlal, even on the broadest sense, we asked, how do you get the transition from Elam HaAchdus of Atzilus to Elam HaSbiyah? That's what we were asking Lulav Arava. So we said, through Tzimtzumim. But we're going to now explore to sort of like how this ends up becoming not just creating Devarim Nefradim, Nivraim, that are able to be bottled to Elikus, or even Klippos, but Klippos in the Tzad HaKedusha, which could be Shema Lepri, but you could even have Klippos which are Hepech HaKavanah. And that can all originate in the spheres of Atzilus. That from the spheres of Atzilus, you can have a circumstance whereby there'll be a bounty, a reward, so to speak, for the Klippos and Sitra Achra. How does that happen? So we're going to say, V'hinei yesh mefarshim. There are those who explain that Elikim shenizke b'maisa v'reishis hu bina. Okay, since you have in Kabbalah in some places that when we say Elikim, we've been saying, what is Elikim? Elikim is Midas Adin. In some Sifrei Kabbalah, they associate Shem Elikim with spheres HaBina. Again, Bina of Atzilus. So what's that got to do with what we were discussing over here? Ba'inyanhu. So the explanation about how Shem Elikim and Bina are related to what we've been talking about till now, which is that through Midas Adin, through Shem Elikim, when you have Bereshis Bar Elikim, you have Toyu Vayu V'Cheshech, you have Gimel Klippos Atmeis. What's that got to do with Bina? Ki yedua the Bina minna dinim is arim b'seifa. The Bina at its far end has it stimulates an aspect of dinim. The Bina, we have this expression in the Zohar about the relationship between Bina and dinim.
What does Misaren mean?
This Eileh, are awakened at its end. But even though usually when we talk about Bina, what do we say Bina? Aim habonim Smecha. The Bina is Ima, Chachma is Abba. Bina is Ima, and what is Ima? Like it says in the pasuk, Intilim Aim habonim Smecha. It's the union of Simcha, which is not usually associated with dinim, right? The latest Hamida is Umi Abina. So the mother of the children, the sons, is bina. And these middays, the spirits of Atzilus, Zah and Malchus, they are the offspring, they are the product of bina. They're nishtalshu from bina. Shazo inyan bereshis, and as the Taifin says in the term bereshis, bara shis. What did Elikim do? Bara shis created six middays. Shema middays, vav ketzavis, the six dimensions, a reference to the middays. Shalzeh Amma bara Elikim. If Elikim is Bina, then we say Bereshis Bar Elikim, we're referring to the fact that from Bina is the Hilodes Hamidis. The spirits of Zah and Malchus are Nishtalshul from Bina. And this you see in Aveda too. When a person engages their Koyach HaBina through his bonus about the greatness of Hashem, that brings about the Hilodes Hamidis. A person can come to a state of Ava and Yirat Hashem. And that's the correlation when we say in the Pasuk, Ema Banim Samecha. That from Bina is the mother of the Banim of the children. The Bina hu Mokim HaSimcha. And therefore Bina is a Mokim of Simcha. Bina is associated with Simcha in the Pasuk. It's through Simcha that you have the Hilodes Hamidis. Commissioner B'chush. Like what do we see in actuality? The Isponus by Inusation is a Yovi HaSimcha V'Ispailas Chuli. When a person engages in Isponus, tries to contemplate about the godless and reignness of Hashem, that brings about in the person a Simcha and Ispailas. A Geschmack. That's a Friedenkeit. So, that explains Ema Banim Samecha. That's one side of Bina. So what all of a sudden we're associating with Bina with Dinim? What's it got to do with Dinim? He says, only Kol Mokim. And yet nevertheless, with all of this Spilus and all of this Simcha and all this Hilodes Hamidis, Bina also Minor Dinim Misarin. It also awakens an inyan of Dinim. And we see this not just Lamaila. This is borne out in Aveda too. Just like it is in a person. And a person, after his bonus, using his Koyach HaBina, gets to a state of his spilus and elikus and excitement and simcha. At the very same time, it develops in them a sense of judgmentalism and anger and frustration about all that is opposed to Eirin Seif, all that is opposed to Elikus. So came bibina, so too lamaila in bina vatzilus. Din misarin al misha ein mispeinin bigdelis havaya. Sorry.
What's wrong?
I don't know.
All good.
Fine. Okay, that's good.
What do you find problematic with that?
I'm just not sure whether when it says Cain, Bina, it's talking about Bina Lamaila. So what Bina Lamaila is angry about people are not explaining Elikus? Or is it the person who's not is angry that
I see the Cain.
similarly earlier when it said when it said the way it's switching between Lamata and Lamaila, I'm not sure where. It's not clear the demarcation. No. I'm not sure. It's not so negay here. The Ika Kavana is to demonstrate how in Bina, whilst you might say the the primary function of Bina and the primary impact of Bina is his spilus, his simcha. It still also includes within it dinim and kas and roigis, this sort of frustration, this judgmentalism associated with dinim, and that we see b'chush, right?
And also Lamayla B'chush, like sorry with Alicia, what was the woman worried about? She was worried that before she was the good one, now compared to him, Alicia is better. She's like a Rosh compared to him, and therefore the anger will go onto her, right?
So, and this is what you see b'chush, that people who daven ba'aveda, people who mispein and elikus, are usually not very tolerant people.
There are some that are though.
Okay, it's not an uncommon association.
Right.
And that's even with people who are emes. We're not talking about people who are stun bluffing. And emes, I think it can come. It's part and parcel of that persona. Can also be a frustration and an intolerance. But adrab. It's not just nevertheless the person gets frustrated, is intolerant. It's not in spite of the bina. It's because of the bina. Adarab. Dafka, because the bina develops a simcha nispaisen likus. Then there's a concomitant sort of like there's an equal sort of reaction of being frustrated and angry with those who are not mispain. And it's commensurate with the level of simcha and ispilus and alikus will similarly be the frustration, the anger, and the disappointment. People they're menagid to it. So, like you have in Tanya, the fi'erech ha'ava is the sinner to klippa. Yeah? V'lochein. K'sha'ol b'machshava livres ha'elam mitzadin. So when the Eibishter wished to create the world mitzadin, hainu al yidei habina, Bereshis bar likim, d'minamis arim adinim ala menagid l'likus, which we've just said that from that bina has the component of being menagid l'likus, being angry and judgmental of those who are menagid l'likus. Fu bechinas yesh she'eina bottle l'likus, that at the existence of a yesh, of a metzius, which isn't bottle l'likus nishtal shum yizesh l'chiadim. What are you going to do about it? You're angry, you're frustrated. So from that frustration, which isn't, which in itself is not even because of tzimtzumim, it's ingrained in bina. Were there to be something which is menagid to alikus, to be angry with it, because it's excited about kedusha. Bina is all about the excitement and about kedusha. From that excitement comes an intolerance of that which isn't kedusha, and that is the sheiresh u'makir for the shluchei adin. So when it comes to peil mamish, when something is menagid elikus and that thing needs to be punished, so what this beer has done is it's sort of it's saying it's not just because of the tzimtzumim. Obviously, b'peil mamish, you need to have the tzimtzumim until you get to the point of shluchei adin, which are going to get a mamish a geschmack, like we talked about the not needing to put sugar in your tea when you're beating someone up. That type of geschmack, that type of shluchei din, that's not in bina batzilus. Such a metzias which is, but what is the nesinas mokim for the klip and the sitter achra is in elikim. Bereshis bar elikim is in bina. So the more we understand bina, you can appreciate how this is
that negative thing. That is that component of bina. To consider.
No, it's just it's a well. On the one hand, it is, yeah, as you're going to see. It reflects a certain yeshus in bina. How can bina have such a thing? In Chachma, it's not, there's no Tefisas Makom B'chal to the Menagid, as we're going to see. Wait, you'll see. Yeah, to an extent. I mean, in Tachlis HaKedusha, but in order that the shluch, this klippen, Sitra Achra, has a mocker. Say, well, what's the mocker for them? How can it be such a klippen Sitra Achra in the world? There's a mocker. There's been about Brishis Bar Lekim. Or says a Toyu Vayvacheshach. So hey magvuris hakoshes shehem bechinas ra la nishus amanagid chuli. That all is what emanates and evolves out of bina, out of this frustration, this intolerance. The sheidish is havusam bechinas hadinim va'arigish lamayla. I'm mizeh. I'm mashkosim mizeh b'dir masma yam and chuli mesh nigel shalof orishin ches. Taiv. So we've sort of enhanced our appreciation of the Sheidish HaKlippa and the Sheidish Hara. And this feeds into a much broader sugya. It's a much broader sugya about, which goes back to the Chokrim. If you go back to the Chokrim that they dealt with, it's like the Shaila is there a Metzias to Cheshach? Cheshach. Is Cheshach literally the absence of light? Or is it a Metzias B'fnei Atzmi? Is there a Metzias called Cheshach? Now, you can that's in the Lashon HaChokrim. In Chassidus, we talk about Eirus and Kalim. Eir and Cheshach is Eirus and Kalim, is Din and Rachamim, is Simtzum and Gilui, and we've got different terms and things. But it all feeds back into this fundamental issue, in which we're going to be swinging backwards and forwards between these two shittas and these two ashkafas. Havayin elikim. Ishem elikim. Ahelim v'hester on Shem Havaya. Shemashu mogin Havaya elikim. Right? You have a sun. And you have a shield of the sun. So in Ishavas or Ilamis, what is the role of the shield? The shield is just to moderate the sun. Right? So what is the Ikka, Koyach Ishavus? What is the Metzias? What is the reality of everything? The top, the dominant, the central issue. The central issue is Oir. The central issue is Shemesh. The central issue is Havaya. Rosh Hashanah. Yeah. So you have the middle. You have this Shem Lakim, which facilitates everything. But we're not going to sort of. There's no Metzias to the Shem Lakim. If there would be no Shemesh, it's not like these are two things. If we didn't have Shemesh, we'd have Mogim. We didn't have Havaya, we'd have Elikim. Cheshach is not an Inyan B'fnei Atzmei. Cheshach is just the head of Ha'oy. That's one way of looking at things. And sometimes in Chassidus, you'll be learning, and that will be the emphasis. Right? When we talk about Guf, the Guf is a Helen Behest on the Neshama. The whole Iker is Iskavris Atzur al Achima. We want to have that's what's most important. Iskavris Atzur al Achima. Ruchnius is more important than Gashmius. We're focusing on Ruchnius. We have to be Mavara the Cheshach in order to be able to have what is the outcome? You have a Bira Cheshach. What's the point of Bira Cheshach? So you shouldn't have a Helen Behest anymore. You should just have Gilu Oir. That's one way of looking at things. So you see, another way of looking at things, they know Cheshach is a Metzias B'fnei Atzmei. Just like there's Oir, there's also Cheshach. And not only is the Cheshach another Metzias of Elikus, the Eibishter creates Oir, the Eibishter creates Cheshach. Cheshach is Be'emes, Mushrash Tifa is deeper than Oir. Which has basically been the main focus, the first part of the hemshekh. This is why the first part of the hemshekh is so important. If you go back to the Tzemach Tzedek's Maimah, in which this is based on, the whole thing about Kaisus and all the Mashal and all the thing about Dibur and all the thing about Ishvisha, it mentions a little bit there about Ishvisha, but Bechlal it's nothing. It's not even. It's not that it goes in the Tzemach Tzedek's Maimah. It goes straight from the questions at the beginning, straight to what we talk about in Shuvi Yisrael. The whole Yom Rosh Hashanah and Yechayim Yamayim is not there. Why is it the Rebbe Rashab puts in there? You have to change your perspective. You can't just go according to this sort of notion where it's where hemshekh and klippa and kois and makabel are just means by which to moderate the o, and the ik is the o. Here we're going to start in these Maimorim. Here we're going to start flipping backwards and forwards between these two ways of thinking, about ways of appreciating or thinking about cheshech, of klippa, of ra, of makabel, of guf, of isha, of dibur, of doimim, whatever it's going to be, of Yisrael, all the different pairings that we're dealing with. But what is it? What have we just said over here? That there's a mocker for cheshech. Toyu vayu v'cheshech has a mocker in Elikim. It's not just it's not nothing. Shane's going. Okay, just hold that in your head. Like this whole sugya about oy and cheshech, about whether cheshech is a metzias b'fnei atzmei or is just a header ha'oy, is going to be key sort of things to think about. Okay, I don't know why I brought that up now, but like for example, in some of the Maimorim you learnt, so like Vidaita Moskva, it talks about Havai Elikim, right? Havai Elikim Kol Echad, yeah, the whole idea of Havai Elikim. There, the emphasis is that Elikim is just a way of moderating Havaya, yeah,
right.
Doesn't see. So ultimately they're Kol Echad, because Elikim is really just the agent of Havaya. It's not menagid to Havaya.
That enables it.
It's an enabler, it's a facilitator of Havaya. But what comes out from there? That the Iker is Havaya. The Iker is O.
Right.
Yeah? And that's why everything's bottled fundamentally. Because it's not really menagid to it. But you have to have, that fits more into the shitta that cheshech is just a header, shemesh umogin Havaya Elikim, that there's no such thing as a mogin without the shemesh. There's no such thing as Elikim without Havaya. Elikim is an agent of Havaya. But what is the Iker? The Iker is Havaya. What we've been explaining, and what the Rebbe Rashab spent a long time in Rosh Hashanah Yechinam Yomayim, was to explain that no, the Iker isn't the neshama necessarily. The Iker isn't the ish. The Iker isn't the seichel midas. The Iker is the guf. The Iker is the isha. The Iker is dibur. And so here we're working in a different paradigm. For a short while, he's in the flow of things here. He's going to go back to that alternative way of looking at things. But then he's going to kick in at the end and get back to his the hashkafa over here. And this is why Ranat is so important, because in the Rebbe's Torah, this is a major sugya. It's not such a major sugya before the Rebbe. The Rebbe makes it into a major sugya. And a lot of the Rebbe's Torah is built upon many, although it doesn't, most of the time it doesn't make reference to it beferish. It's miyusad on this hashkafa, on this alternative perspective, which is not like one or the other. They both exist. It's different madrigas. It's the way, but the importance of this perspective comes to its fruition in the Rebbe's Torah, and that's why Ranat. So I believe Ranat is so important. Ochin inyan shita mitzarachim imaynu shem Havaya ki Havaya b'chachma ksiv. However, because if Midas Hadim would have created everything, if Reishis Bar Elikim would have been the end of the story, then there would be the Shluchi Din, there would be Ragomo, in order to punish all the people who are Menagid to Elikus. And then you'd have a strong Metzias of Ra. So shit of Midas Harachamim, which is Shem Havaya. Elikim is Bina, and Havaya is Chachma. Ki Havaya b'Chachma Ksiv. Uva Chachma, mitzad moichin de gadlus, mashla maila mi abina v'hadas, shom ein amenagid li toifes mokum klal klal. In Chachma, where there's moichin de gadlus, where this the nekudas of Chachma, it sees, in the moshel of Chachma, that Bina, what is the function of Bina? The Koyach HaBina in Nefesh is to create the dimensions of the idea. The Eileh, the Reichev, and the Eimek of the idea is discovered, is fought out in Bina. So what does that mean to create the Eileh, Reichev, and Eimek of an idea? An idea needs to have boundaries. Otherwise, it's not an idea. It's not a functioning idea. It's already in Bina. Already, there's as much as Seichel is la'atzmo, it's not b'shvil azulas. Bina already has an assumption or an awareness of the notion of azulas, of other ideas, other ways of thinking about things. And achas kam v'kam, when it reaches das, about how this idea is going to, how it's going to be sort of, you're going to attach to it in a way that you're going to identify with it, which means identifying with it is in a way of midas. Das being the miftach of the kol shis, you're going to open up your midas, and your midas is mamish legabi azulas. So the notion of azulas and the awareness of that is already found in bina when you're cultivating the dimensions of this idea. In Chachma, all that's teifas mokim is the idea itself. Meichin de gadlus. It's the idea in and of itself. So there's no tefisas mokim for a menagid. There's nothing opposing it because there's no it's not being mevatel the menagid. The menagid is bechlal not even present. When a person is in a state of chachma, they don't even know what's going on around them. Not just going on around, they know what's going on in themselves. Your own identity becomes subsumed in the meichin de gadlus. There's no tefisas mokim for azulas. So chachma. So once you have shit of midas harachamim, you don't get so intolerant of opposing ideas. There is no opposing ideas. There's no tefisas mokim for the opposing ideas. The davke bebechinas bina shesham ha'ir mit tzumtzum ve'enim meir, where you have in bina, which is already a tzimtzum ha'ir, from the way it was in chachma. And the idea in and of itself is not so dominant. It's not meir. Kanal be'inyan kavish ba'asha chuli, like we said above. What do we say above in Lulav Arava? We were there talking about what it says in the Zayah, kavish ba'asha v'galid berucha, that you cook something up in fire and then you solidify it in air. So what are we talking about in the Zayah? You have water. Instead of it being Talad Yisaides of Eish Ruach Mayim Offer, you have Gimel Yisaides, Eish Mayim Ruach. If you use the Eish to boil up the water, and then with the air or something it solidifies things of some sort, what do you have left? You have all the dafruris, you have the dust, you have the offer. And so we explained how it's this kavish ba'asha, the Gali Baruch is associated with Bina. If you remember, all the way back in Lulav Arava, it's on this page. Go ahead. It's over here on the page.
And
no, nun.
Right.
It says Mentes?
Oh, Mentes ve'ilach.
No, it's in nun. I don't know why they say Mentes. It doesn't say it there. It says Kavish Ba'asha v'Galid Barucha. So it said over here, K'shenoifle is Askola Chadosha B'chachmosei, Ein Nigish Ba'dain Eisis Klal, Rak Askola Levada. Yad Achak, K'shem Ispein in Achak Mecht V'nosi Lavin Al Burya, Yimtsu'u, V'yurgeshu B'chinas Eisis Ba'askola Zu. So this sort of taking something The oisiyah, the point it was trying to make there was that the afruris is there in the water kol azman. It was always there. Just wasn't in the chachma. There's also oisiyus. It's just not apparent. They're bottle. But through bina, which is the kavish ba'ashra, that's the fire. Right? Chachma is mayim, bina is eish. Through the bina, it causes the emergence of the metzias ha'oisius, the hagoshas ha'oisius. In bina, it's in machshava, because bina is also machshava. Remember, we've got lots of things colliding over here. But it's already a strictly hagosh ha'oisius. Not to the extent of oisius adibur. That's a further process. So he says, "Kanal be'inyan kavesh be'ashachuli lechin kol hasagu b'chinas yesh." Because when it comes down to the level of bina, it's already a state of yeshus. The nitzvahs ba'isius v'kelim chuli kanal.
Why is kol hasaga yesh?
Why is kol hasaga?
Because you understand it. It has to be a you to understand it.
It's not just
no you.
not just a question. There has to be a you. It's about the haskalah shabadava. The thing, in order for me to grasp something, the thing has to be a metzius. Otherwise, I can't grasp it. Why in chokhmah is it barak hamavrik? I haven't got the kelim to be mekabel it. I have to immediately use koyach habina to give it a tfisa, to have a halbosha and a hasog. Everything about hasog is halbosha. So sai is a reflection of the malbish, but it's also a reflection of the malubash. The musig itself becomes yesh. It's not just the person. The nitfus, the thing itself becomes nitfus in oisius and in kalim. Like we said before, the oisius are machshava in bina. So as soon as you have b'chinas yesh, one hasog the hasog itself becomes b'chinas yesh. So it's going to have something which is menagid to it. Because it's going to have its conventions. It's going to have its oirech, reichiv, and oimek. And there's a point where this hasog is going to reach ad peisavi v'sulai. And the thing that reaches the other, coming from the other side, is going to be menagid to it. It's not that thing. Hence, it's menagid to it. B'shaych b'chinas dinim v'reigis, and then you can have the possibility of frustration, anger, intolerance. Where in the chachma everything is begilui, all that's tefes mokim is the haskala itself, not the way it's malubish in me. And a person doesn't take a grasp it. That's why we always associate in chachma the union of bittul, because it's not metzius, there's no yeshus in the haskala, in any of it. That's why chachma is koyach ma ukanal b'komokim shemei gilu shamu b'chinas abitul. And like we've been saying at length till now, that where there's gilu there's bittul. Why is kaved malchus chimei guvaras chita beir? Why does there have to be tzimtzum ha'oir in order there can be metzius for yeshus ha'isius? Without that, there won't be. Where there's gilu everything will be bottled. Ulazais. The bechinas hachachma, bechinas chachma, einli tevis mokim hamanagid liyis bechinas din v'reigas alakla. So that's the shit of mitzrachim. What was the problem of Bereshis Bar Elikim, creating the world with bina, the minah misarin, dinah misarin b'seifa, we said, and therefore there'll be toiv v'choshech, there'll be tziyas hara, lanish is a managid, gvuris koshes, Rosh Hashanah Eileh yochol iskayim, shit of imay midas harachimim. Gilui, midas harachmim, havaya, chachma. So the union of chachma is that there isn't tefis mokim lemenagid. There's no musug of a menagid. You understand?
Fine.
So we've explained this lemaila. Now we're going to go in the shekla aved, and in the union way is lamata. But the structure of the idea, you want to understand what is it's describing chachma as here, what it's describing bina as here, how that is identical. We've identified that with elikim and avaya, and we've identified that with din and rachamim. But the chassidus shebedava, the hasbara shebedava, is is still is relying on a lot of things we explained till now. So it's the hemshekh, he's mamish. He's always going to be relying on earlier things. So the more clarkite you have in the earlier material, the easier all this becomes. Just to emphasize again the importance of chazar. So, how do we understand this? We can understand the way this is in a person lamata. Sibas harigis v'hakas mitzad hayeshus dafka. Why does a person get angry and intolerant? Is because of that person's yeshus, their hargoshas atzmai, their sense of self. The greater, bigger ego a person has, and the more self-absorbed the person is, they're going to be more and more incapable of tolerating someone that disagrees with them. And the more self-effacing a person is, the more humble a person is, the more self-forgetful a person is. Someone who doesn't koch in sich so much, is not so self-absorbed. He won't be offended if someone disagrees with him. Okay, someone disagrees with me. You don't hold from me, I also don't hold from me. It's not an issue. Some of us halten sich gar stark. Somebody disagrees with them it will bother them. This is also like what is explained somewhere else. Children are much more intolerant. Whereas an adult has a greater capacity for tolerance. So because the older a person gets, the more mature and intelligent they become, and intelligence is a source of self-awareness. Aware of a person's, that they become more self-aware and therefore less self-absorbed. The more aware you are of the reality of yourself, the less self-absorbed you become. And so too, this is the difference between, not just between people of different ages, but also within a person, between a person and seichel midis. A person who is a Baal Midis is going to be far less tolerant, because Midis are much more nirgash. A person is caught up in the a midah is about them. It's my feelings. It's my feelings about Azulas. Whereas Seichel, it's not about me, it's about the muskal, primarily. Obviously, within Seichel itself, you have different Chacham and Binah, but broadly speaking, Shamidas the Yesem Mechinas Yesh Tefes Mokim Hamanagil Yesh Bekasalov. There has to be much more of a in midas. There's much more of a tefisas mokim for the zulas, because the whole thing about a midah is my feelings towards somebody else. So the metzias of that menagid is going to be much more tefis mokim. Whereas in seichel, which is not about somebody else, it's just about the muskal. It's about the haskalah. Ain't a menagid tefis mokim. There isn't such a great tefisas. It isn't as intolerable. Obviously, we're not talking absolutes. We're talking about relatively speaking. Yeah.
Okay.
Of course, within Haskalah, you're going to have people that are going to be more like a chacham. One's going to be more like a maven, and then there's going to be differences in their qualities.
Isn't this quite different from what we said a bit? Well, it's not different. Before we said that the Balaveda will get angry, which is to do with mechem.
But that was to do with bina. In contrast to Chachmas, we were talking in that. That's what I'm saying. It's relatively speaking.
Right.
That you would think, okay, dinim v'reigas. We would think dinim v'reigas. Where's that going to come from? That's going to come from gvura, right? We're saying that it can even come from bina, even a higher madrega. Right. We already gave it a tifra makeh. Right. There is much more subtle. right? It did say, it says Besoifa at the end of bin. It's not like the whole identity of Bina is not about this, but it's an aspect of it. And here we're doing more broader strokes. Adults and children, even within a person, Seichel Midas. Like now, in the Meichen itself, I have been Chacham Lebina, the Bebina, the Yeshameh Sham Eir Mitzumson Levad, are you Bechinas Yesh? Lachin Tefes Mokim Amanagid Mashen, came Bechacham Shmei Sham Gilu Eir, who Bechinas Bittel Betachlis, Ein Amanagid Tefes Mokim Sham. So we have all of these ways of applying this principle. That where there is, and it's relative, where there is more bittul, there's more tolerance. Where there's more yeshus, there's less tolerance. Yeah. V'cheinu ba'aveda, and the same thing we find in aveda. What is aveda? The davka ba'aveda b'bechinas hasaga ve'hisponus b'elikus. Aveda means hisponus, the hisponus of elikus. The davka ba'aveda b'bechinas hasaga ve'hisponus b'elikus, shu bechinas murgash b'bechinas yesh. What is the whole point of Aveda? The whole point of Aveda is Chabad, to Poshet, good verstehen. Now, there's levels of Hispon. But here we're talking about not just Hisponus limudis, to really understand something. We're talking about Hisponus in the sense of in davening, that it should become absorbed into a person's seichel, and from that should be Neilad Midas, Ava Vayira, and a person should be dedicated to Hashem. Now that whole process comes with an assumption. The premise of that whole process is that there's a Metzius, there is a Yesh that needs to go through the process of Aveda. Yeah? You could say the whole point of the Aveda is to create bittul, ibut oiris. You're taking a hide and you're going to bash it in order that it should become more edel. But the starting point of everything is that there's a yesh. And that yesh is being engaged with. It's not, you can't say it's indifferent to the Metzias hayesh. The hergish hayesh is in avodah is very strong. Because the whole point of it is, because, the reason you're sitting down to daven and to be mispoining and to be ma'ira aven yira is because you're a yesh. You're self-absorbed. The act of avodah is an act of self-centeredness. It's not about azulas. You're not going on with time. The main focus of Aveda, this Aveda, is not about the zulas. It's not bittul atzmu legamri. It's all about yourself. So, it's the whole premise of Aveda. You want to have a gefil for Avon Yer. Yesh mi shoyiv. It's going to be somebody who's having that feeling. Oslo yuchol this menagid. So, an inevitable seemingly inevitable outcome of Aveda is that you're going to be intolerant. You're going to be intolerant. And you're going to get angry with people who haven't got the same degree of commitment to Elikus as you do. So, the more you're b'chinas yesh, the more intolerant you're going to become. And since Aveda demands yeshes, it's inevitably going to create people who are intolerant. From the sweat of the Chayes HaKodesh, the Nahar Dinu. The Nahar Dinu is this sort of purifying river, goes out. The Abba Yira of the Malachim. Mizanas and Nahar Dinu lanish Zurishayim. So, on the one hand, you got Abba Yira to Hashem. What is the Poel Yetz of Abba Yira to Hashem? Nahar Dinu to the Rishayim.
What's Nahar Dinu?
Nahar Dinu is the river of fire that purifies people who have sinned.
I only knew that from Norse mythology.
Chen ba'adam.
You survive it makes you invincible.
Chen ba'adam.
Technically,
So you find a person that in their Aveda, they develop an Av and Yira. Not just Tam, gemacht, real Av and Yira, Biskalas Alev. Mispoil, Umiskais, Al Managid, La'onshe V'Tchesei. Gets so angry with those who are not. The Managid to Alikus, he wants to punish them and push them away. Creates this midrash. Yadu, the Kol Zeu, Bechinas Yesh Adayin. This is all in the context of being a Yesh. Both the hisponness the person has is murgash, because you're the one who's thinking about it and you're contextualizing it into your own ways of thinking. So it's very much b'murgash. When it comes to the midas kedoshos, having av and yira, is for sure yesh. Is a person can get angry. You might say, what's so terrible? I'm just getting angry with people who don't care about kedusha, don't care about likus. So you might think, what's the big deal? The reality, it might, the context of it doesn't change the fact that you have a midrash at this moment. Being angry is a midrash. And from it's nishtalshul that you're actually going to probably do something not nice to somebody. So it's not just a feeling; it ends up being an applied thing. So that's all standard. When you're b'chinas yesh, when it's all mitzad from bino hisponenus. But when you have that's mitzad adin. When you have shitzafin mitzad rachamim, you may oirachachma. She'oz heim b'chinas bittul v'heda hergesh. You reach a darga where you become bottle through your hisponenus. You reach a higher madrega. You have shitzafin mitzad rachamim. There's bittul, and you're not so self-absorbed and self-centered. You get to the real nakuda. Then you don't get angry. You might even see your opponent, the person, the mamish managid to what you care about. You're not going to get angry with him and want to punish him. No, it's not going to be teifus mocking, because it's not about you. Why should I get angry with somebody else? My whole Avodas Hashem was not about me. When it's all about me, then the other person irritates me. When it's not about me, b'chlal, it's about the inyan. Then you don't suffer from this midrash. When you have the shit of midas arachamim, the gila achachma, bittul, it's not that he doesn't care less, because then it's incoherent. How can he not care less? He cares about the inyan. It might not be personal, but he cares about somebody who isn't concerned about, on the lowest madrig, on poshetarian mitzvahs, but on a higher madrig is not about Eileh things, chassidish inyan. Blosh Ashkenaz, es wird nicht gut davon. He's upset about it. He's upset about the reality that there is something that can be opposed to kedusha. And through it distressing him, that's how he gets rid of the managid. It's not by getting angry at that person or punishing them. It's by being disappointed with them. It's a different reaction, right? And when the managid sees this disappointment, that it upsets the person, that it distresses them, that can trigger a change in the managid. Different way of having hashbah. But even that, you might say that there's a little bit of a mixing in here of gevuris, just like in the first case. But when you have this, there is an element of gevuris over here. Even the person who's got the shit of midas harachim, got the chachma, like we described, and is just disappointed and upset that there's something which is nagit elikus, there's already kricht a bissel gevura. The bittul of chasodim be'emes eini reisam nagit klal. If you reach an ultimate level of bittul, you don't even see the opposition to kedusha. Or gamim yira, or if you do see, doesn't bother him. And this is a very geschmack point. It could be this is why, if you remember in the mashal of the cups right at the beginning, if you have only hot water, they'll smash. If you have cold water, they get dirty. What's the nimshal? Get dirty. We said chatoin skin. There'll be a proliferation and an expansion of chaytin. If everything is midas harachamim, if the Eibush would have created the world just midas harachamim, then everyone there'll be no one would be bothered about people sinning, because at the ultimate level of chachma, you don't see the menagid, and even if you see it, you don't care. You're not tefus mokim. You're so bottle. You're over bottle, right? There's a naivety. You miss the whole thing, and that creates a whole load of problems.
Doesn't help anybody.
Doesn't help anyone.
It's causing more problems.
That's why, for all of what we're saying, we're not saying, oh, just have chokhmah. Why do we need all of this? Why do Bichlal need all of this?
Then it's like you're saying it's not a problem.
Right.
It's like there's a part do something bad and you're like completely not bothered by somebody. It's like if you have like a friend that's like doing an avera, you don't care at all. It's like, oh, I'll do Torah and it's all fine. It's clips plished him, everything's good.
Why would we not bothered? Why would the chokhmah be not bothered?
The person. You know these people that like bottle.
Because in the level of chokhmah,
no,
it's more that in even by the Eibush, it's also Kedusha. Everything's from the Eibush. From a certain level of the Makif. What do we say in the Ber Mitzvah Maimah? What difference does it make to him? Yeah, that's what the pasuk says. Right? So you won't care.
If somebody has this mitzvah,
why? Because mitzvah the Eibush. How can anything be menaged to alikus? If everything's alikus.
Okay.
You don't see it as a menaged b'chol.
What do you see as that?
A gilu alikus in a different way.
Short mind.
Okay, so what time we know?
It's a very short mind.
Yeah, I want to do the next paragraph though, because it's in the same flow, and then next time we'll finish off the mind. So this is all a mashal. Yeah, this whole paragraph. And by the way, this is in these little segraim is saying important points about how we're going to work out the shit of midas harachamim. We're not talking about other. We don't just want midas hadin, and we don't just want midas harachamim. We've already talked about the flaws of only having midas hadin.
Right.
Person would not be able to keep up such an intense avodas Hashem. Sai mitzad diktuk, sai mitzad nisyonos. There's going to be an expansion of Ra and Klippa and the Shluchi Adin, and there's going to be Nikas Achitzonim, and then here we're getting the first inkling of what the problem would be if there would be Midas Harachamim. What there would be if there would only be Midas Harachamim. So we need to have a shit of Midas Harachamim. But is this just in the mashal of the cases you just have a warm water, right? You have hot water, you have cold water. Let's make a mine peshrim, lukewarm water. So it's like a favasita. It's like a watered down version. Is it just sort of like a shvachamai alavai shiyamid? Is that what we're going to get to? We want a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It's not going to be. What is going to be compromised to create this shit of mitzvah rachmim? We haven't got to that point yet. How are we going to do this whole shit of mitzvah rachmim? That's going to be primarily the last two Maimarim, and Be'ikil L'chol Tichla. So that's where that was our moshul. Sorry, not being as clear as you. Hopefully, hopefully I'm usually more clear, but it's a bit of tumult. So we just gave a moshul lamata. We just gave the moshul lamata. about the greater to the more a person is b'chinas yesh, the more intolerant they are, and therefore if they rise to the occasion and they're able to have shittim and tzarachim, they're able to have a more of a b'chinas bittul, chachma, then they'll be more tolerant, less intolerant. So this can also be understood the way it's lamaila. There you have the gilu, like we said, v'sham hu b'chinas ma b'chinas bittul b'tachlis u'lezayis le'ispol yom anagli b'din b'regis olav. That's why there won't be this intolerance and frustration with all that is opposite or opposing. I'm going to do this next time. There's too much. We're not going to be able to do it in 5 minutes. Okay, we'll do this paragraph next time.